Okay, welcome back. We're on page 417 talking about this first part of the TPS system, which is data collection. So we have mentioned, of course, that source data automation, so that's a good topic, and it's all about being able to, using online transaction processing to find errors very quickly and fix them almost immediately so I don't have to wait a cycle to get good data. So yes, data collection could be batch, and it could be online transaction with source data automation. That would be really cool. The next one is editing. I'm going to skip this little diagram for a minute. So data editing, it's pretty straightforward. I enter some stuff and then I need to do some verifications to make sure it's good. So I check my account numbers to make sure they're good. I checked that I didn't actually type in a 200 hours in a week when it was supposed to be 20. So all that kind of stuff. So, the cost data has to be numeric and names, all the data, all that, just all the stuff that has to happen to make sure, input validation that occurs to make sure everything is right. And if it's not, it pops it out and says there's something wrong, you need to fix it. So I call this sanity checking. In other words, like, no, you did not work 4,000 hours this last week. No, you didn't do it. Things like, whoops, that's not a valid account code. You missed a number somewhere. Okay. So the next one after that is the correction part. So hopefully I've got source data automation, so my corrections happen immediately. In other words, I type in an account number and hit tab to go to the next one. It immediately comes back and says that account number is not any good. And I go, oh, dang, that's a 4 there. And I go and make a change. Cool. If not, then I have to go back and fix things kind of manually. But this is all about, fixing errors that got corrected. The processing piece. I mentioned the data processing isn't all that robust. I mean, it can do some math, of course. But we're not going to go in here and do any, calculations, summarizing, and storing, that kind of stuff. But we're not going to be doing, okay, what's the average time it took you to perform this task. No, that's not what this is about. This guy's all about just collecting the raw data. Somebody else can ask all sorts of cool what-if questions. This guy is just basically, calculating my pay. That'd be a good example. But not decision support. All right, the next one is storage. So I need to store this stuff somewhere. So typically it's going to be in a database, right? So storing it, and then after that, I need to keep some stuff for a long time. For example, my payroll information, I need to keep that for whatever, a really long time to make sure, my payroll taxes are paid and all the information I need to be able to send to the feds. Plus, I need to keep all the information so at the end of the year I can produce, the income tax documents. And, there's a lot of stuff I need to keep as a businessman. I can't just throw this data away. Last, of course, is the reports. Now, when you see reports or document preparation, don't be thinking paper here, because in the old days, that's what this does. It produced, reams and reams of paper. But that's not what we're talking about now. We're talking about, there's some hard copy documents, but most of this is going to be what's called soft copy, which is just like a PDF file or an Excel spreadsheet, because this TPS report could be the feed for some other system. So it has to be in an electronic format, otherwise, I can't do anything with it. If it produces a piece of paper, how am I going to get that in? I guess I could scan it, but that'd be kind of dumb. So most of these guys can produce checks and invoices and paper documents where paper is required, and then produce data feeds into other systems a little higher up the chain. Okay, so that is what TPS is all about. Now this next term is called Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP. And this is a little confusing because ERP is not really on the same level as TPS. TPS is data collection, all the rest. So an ERP is basically does TPS and quite possibly does more than just TPS. But it's really all about having a single vendor, a single integrated database, so that everyone is putting into the same system. There's nothing in the TPS world, there's nothing that says the accounting people can't have their own database and the manufacturing people can't have theirs. And, that is, TPS doesn't say anything at all about how well integrated all this stuff is. Contrast that with an enterprise resource planning tool, an ERP. Now we are talking about having everything integrated. So basically, the ERPs tend to subsume an awful lot of the TPS stuff, but they extend it. They do TPS related things, but then they do something a little more. These guys are typically more about the process, okay? Not necessarily the data. So you could say TPS is data centric and an ERP is process centric. Okay, that'd be like a good test question, wouldn't it? Okay, just checking. So let's look at some of the key features of this thing. There's a figure that kind of shows a picture here. Oh, come on. Stop it. Okay. So the real key feature is that all this stuff uses a single integrated database. That's really it's all about. It's integrated, all the parts talk to each other, and we have one database, so there's no duplication. I think we've heard this before, haven't you? Okay, so this is what an enterprise resource planning tool is all about. It's taking the idea of TPS, but kind of modernizing it, and it's not just talking about data now. We're talking about how do I process an invoice? Not here's the data you fill out or an invoice, but the actual document flow. TPS is just about here's the form, fill it out. And this guy's more about, okay, now after I've got this form, I need to send it to this guy to get approved, and then it goes over here to the accounting system, and then it goes over here to manufacturing, and then it goes over here to, it travels through the system, tells it how to route documents and where the decision points are. So it's a lot more than just data entry. It's more process flow and sort of like a paperwork flow, if it was paper, a paperwork flow kind of a system. Okay. So that is what an ERP is all about. Now, ERPs have some significant advantages, mainly which we just talked about. But so they talk about improved access to quality data. So over and above what a TPS can do, these guys can provide better data. And the reason why they can provide better data is because they have one database. Okay? That's really the reason for having quality data, is that it's all in one place, and therefore it doesn't have to be processed or cleaned up or matched. I don't have to have my payroll people and the HR people and the manufacturing people all using different codes, and I have to link a bunch of crap together to be able to produce a simple report. It's all in one database. Cool. Another one talks about eliminating costly and flexible legacy systems. Now, this is kind of a crazy thing to talk about when you talk about the advantage of buying new equipment is you get to throw away the old equipment. That's essentially what they're saying. In other words, if you buy a new ERP system, typically what they're going to do is they're going to say, look, you're not going to be using this old accounting software over here anymore. You're not going to be using this payroll processing information. You're not going to use this HR and manufacturing. In other words, the ERP is going to come in and replace it all with a single vendor, integrated, and one database. So, yeah, it could be that your existing systems were kind of costly and perhaps inflexible. Okay, cool. The next one talks about improvement of workflow. Well, see, these things are all based upon what's called best practices. So when you go buy an ERP system, they're going to ask you, what kind of business are you in? And if you say, well, I'm in a shoe repair business, they're going to look in their database and find best practices for shoe repair. Yeah, they're going to go and come in like business experts. Instead of just providing you hardware and software, they're actually going to be providing you business advice. They're going to come in and say, here's how we think you need to do this process. Here's how we think you need to do your warehouse, your inventory, your payroll. In other words, they're going to come in and give you advice, what they call best practices. And if you go with a company who's been around a while, most likely their industry best practices are pretty doggone good. And they may have like an order, a reorder point system in their warehouse that you would have never have thought about. And so, yeah, you can improve work processes. Now, do you improve work processes because you bought a piece of hardware and software? No. You improve work processes by changing people and procedures. Remember all that before? We've kind of talked about people and procedures as the most important two of the components of an integrated, IS system. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what we're talking about here. Because they came down and gave you good business advice, you can change your procedures. Perhaps you can reduce your staff because these procedures are actually that good. Okay, cool? Makes sense. All right, let's continue. Upgrade technology infrastructure. Well, yeah, I can imagine that, yes, it would provide you an opportunity to say, well, look, I'm going to shut the system down and replace it, so I might as well go ahead and just get some more hardware. Hardware, operating system, and databases. Well, let's go ahead and do the whole thing all at once. Okay, that's kind of weird. The next thing I talk about is like the leading vendors. Now, the vendors for these guys kind of separate into tiers, and I'll tell you what. There's actually a tier that's less than this, but a tier 1 is somebody who's making $1 billion. And well, hell, that ain't me. And then a tier 2. 500 million to a billion, and then tier 3 is 10 million to 50 million. Okay, so the big boys are basically Oracle and SAP. Now, these are companies that have been around and have been doing this for a living. Oracle obviously does lots of things, right? They make databases, they make ERP systems. SAP, that's all they do for a living. Okay, that's it. In fact, they don't even have their own database. They actually use like Oracle or somebody else's database. So this is what they do for a living. Then you kind of get middle smaller. Then you have like Microsoft and some of these other companies you've heard of. And then you get down to these guys, and then there's an explosion of these guys, of people who do this kind of stuff for a living. Okay, there is an opportunity here. We're going to talk about it in just a minute about having this thing hosted on a cloud rather than you coming in. When you hire an ERP system, SAP is going to come in here and say, well, we can come in with our own machines and do it all here on site. Or why don't we just do this in the cloud? You don't have to do jack. All you do is just log in. Yeah, so all the big boys do that for a living. Okay, so let's continue. They have an example here of supply chain management. Okay, and I don't know why they picked that particular thing. But supply chain management is a classic example of using an ERP because it's kind of complex. I need to make sure that, I do the right kind of planning. I'm getting ready to manufacture something, so I plan when it's going to fit in the production schedule. And then I have to back up. Okay, when I need the materials, so I have to back up. Here's how long it takes to order the materials. It's an awful lot of work involved in that and making sure that all the parts arrive at the warehouse at the same time, so I can build whatever it is I'm building on the manufacturing line. So it is kind of sort of complex. So let's just kind of go through it. So one of the things they talk about is the logistics part. So, well, I guess we'll just kind of go through it. So sales forecasting. Yeah, I need to know how many of these things am I planning on building? I don't know, because I have to figure out how many I'm planning on selling. Sales and operations. What's the manufacturing capacity? If I don't know what my manufacturing capacity is, I could not tell you how many days of production I need. Demand management. This is refining that production plan by, weekly or daily or whatever it takes. Detailed schedule. It talks about, okay, now we're going to shut down the plant on this day. We'll switch over manufacturing to this. So it's, very, very detailed scheduling, what has to happen. Okay. Material requirements planning. This is all about, I need all this raw material. It has to be delivered on time. Lots of good stuff. Hey, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll just pick this thing up again in just a few.